Okay guys, today we're going to look at a fraction review, and this should be review for you guys. All of this stuff is stuff that you should have seen in the past, but we're just going to go over some things really quickly so that you have it in notes and you have the information to go back and refer to. So for our fraction review, so we have our fraction, the parts of our fraction. We use 1/2 as our example. Our top number is our numerator. Our bottom number is our denominator. And then the fraction bar, that means divided by, is our vinculum. Not that you really need to know that, but just some information for you. So any number can be made into a fraction by adding a denominator of 1. So a whole number, like 3, can be made into a fraction by putting 1 under it. Okay. Negative fractions. Can fractions be negative? Absolutely. We show that 3 different ways. We can have negative 1/2. We can have negative 1/2 where the negative sign is with our numerator, or we could have negative 1/2 where the negative sign is with our denominator. So we can have it here next to the division bar or fraction bar. We can have it with our numerator. We can have it with our denominator. I'll make this a little darker. It's kind of hard to see. All right, making equivalent fractions. All right, if you multiply or divide the numerator and denominator by the same number, you get an equivalent fraction. Okay, so we'll do some examples. For example, 2/6. If I were to multiply both my numerator and my denominator by 6, 2 times 6 is 12. 6 times 6 is 36. My equivalent fraction would be 12/36. I have 125ths. If I want to simplify that, I could divide both of these, my numerator and my denominator, by 25. 100 divided by 25 is 4, and 25 divided by 25 is 1. And that 4/1, just like this right here, guys, is our whole number. So 4/1 would equal 4. Okay. If I have 3/7, and I want to create an equivalent fraction, I'm going to multiply. Let's say I multiply both of these by 5, both my numerator and my denominator. 3 times 5 is 15, and 7 times 5 is 35. And then last example, 8/20. I want to simplify that. So I could divide both the numerator and the denominator by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 20 divided by 4 is 5. So 2/5 would be my equivalent fraction. All right, let's look at the other side. So reducing, we just touched on that a little bit when we did our equivalent fractions. A fraction is fully reduced when the only number that divides evenly into both the numerator and the denominator is 1. So for example, if I have a really big fraction like 120/112, so I want to simplify that. Well, I know these are both even numbers. So even if I don't know the largest number that will divide into both of these evenly, I know that they're even, so I can divide them by 2. And 120 divided by 2 is going to give me 60, and 112 divided by 2 would give me 56. Okay? So now look at that and decide, can I divide that some more? Well, I can. These are both even numbers again, so I know that they're divisible by 2, And so 60 divided by 2 is going to be 30. And 56 divided by 2 would be 28. And so then again, even numbers, I can divide by 2. 30 divided by 2 is going to give me 15. And 28 divided by 2 is 14. And since it's improper, then I want to convert that to a mixed number. So it's in proper form. So 14 goes into 15 one time. 15 minus 14 is 1, so I have 1 left over, and 14 is my denominator because that is the denominator I had in my improper fraction. All right, let's look at another one. Say we have 42 over 56. All right, when I look at these, they're both even. I could divide by 2. All right, so 42 divided by 2 is 21. And 56 divided by 2 is 28. And now I look at those and I say, oh, okay, well, 7 is a multiple of these numbers. So I can divide both of these by 7. And 21 divided by 7 is 3. And 28 divided by 7 is 4. So I get 3/4. Adding and subtracting. We can only add and subtract fractions if they are written with the same denominator. Okay, so when we are adding and subtracting fractions, we have to make them the same. We have to have that same denominator. All right, if I have 2 cakes and I have one cut into thirds and one cut into fourths, I can't just, they're not the same size pieces, so I can't add and subtract those pieces. I have to have the pieces the same so I know how much cake I have all together. So I'm going to rewrite as equivalent fractions. With the same denominator. Okay. So that means creating that equivalent fraction back to the front of our sheet where we're going to be multiplying our numerator and denominator by the same number. We're going to find that least common multiple for those denominators, and then we're going to multiply our fractions so we create those common denominators. Then we're going to add and subtract only the numerators. Denominator is going to stay the same, that common denominator you created. And then if possible, you're going to simplify. So let's look at an example. If I have 5/6 minus 1/2. Okay. 6 and 2 are my denominator, so I need a common denominator for 6 and 2. I need the least common multiple. Well, for 6 and 2, my least common multiple is going to be 6. So for 5/6, I don't have to do anything. 1/2, I need to multiply that by 3. 1 times 3 is 3, and 2 times 3 is 6. So I'm going to have 5/6 minus 3/6. And now I can subtract my numerators. 5 minus 3 is 2, and my denominator stays the same, and I can simplify 2/6 by 2. 2 goes into 2 one time, and 2 goes into 6 3 times. And that's the same process that we use if we're adding. So if we're adding and subtracting, we have to have that common denominator. We add or subtract our numerators, and we simplify. Okay, multiplying and dividing. These are much easier because we don't have to worry about having that common denominator. We can multiply fractions with any denominator. Okay, so when we multiply fractions, we're going to multiply their numerators. And then we're going to multiply their denominators. Once we've done that, then we're gonna look and see if we can simplify that fraction, and we're gonna always simplify. Always simplify. So if I have 3/7 times 1/3, I'm gonna multiply my numerators. 3 times 1 is 3. I'm gonna multiply my denominators. 7 times 3 is 21. And then I'm gonna look and say, can I simplify this? And I can. I'm gonna divide by 3. 3 goes into 3 one time, and 3 goes into 21 7 times. So 3/7 divided by, or times 1/3 is 1/7. And the process is the same for division, except for one thing. Okay? So when we're dividing, we can rewrite our problem as a multiplication problem. Let's see if this orange will show up. Okay? So for dividing, we just have the one extra step. We want to change our division problem to a multiplication problem. So our first fraction is going to stay the same. We don't do anything to it. We're going to change our division to multiplication. And we're going to flip, which is take the reciprocal, the opposite. Okay, take the opposite of the second fraction. So, for division, we have just the one extra step, all right? Our first fraction is going to stay the same. We're going to change division to multiplication. We're going to get the reciprocal of our second fraction, and then we're going to follow our rules for multiplication. So we're going to multiply our numerators, and we're going to multiply our denominators, and then we're going to simplify if possible. So if we have our example, 1/18 divided by 1/4. So 1/18 is going to stay the same. We're not going to change it. We're going to change our division to multiplication, and 1/4 becomes 4/1. That's its reciprocal. Okay. Then we're going to multiply. So 1 times 4 is 4. 18 times 1 is 18. And then I look at 4 and 18. Well, they're both even numbers, so I can simplify those. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. So I get 2 ninths.